Hi everyone, this is Nick Pollock here from Roar Lions Roar. While you're here, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that alert bell so you never miss any of our new content. And if you prefer to listen instead of watch, make sure you check us out on your podcast platform of choice where you can subscribe and download each new episode. Thanks for watching and thanks for listening. Go State!
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Roar Lions Roar. I'm your host tonight, Matt Filipovich. Oh my God, Bill, I'm sorry. I've been out of practice for a week. I'm joined by my phenomenal co-host, Mr. Bill DeFilippo. Bill, is there anything at all you want to talk about today?
No, nothing. I think that's it. If you want to wrap up this edition of the pod now,
Well,
go
this is
ahead.
good because I was looking for a segue to talk about Wicked. I am not being paid by Wicked is not a sponsor, but I saw Wicked last night.
Are you sure Wicked is not a sponsor with what their marketing budget very clearly is?
Listen, Wicked not a sponsor, but as always, they could be. Bill, no notes. I loved Wicked. I do have some commentary though on the movie theater going experience. I signed up for AMC Stubs, not a sponsor, but they could be. And with that came an automatic upgrade of the size of my popcorn and my soda. I'm not a big soda guy,
Okay.
but I'll get a Diet Coke, like when I'm at the movies or on an airplane. Only 2 times I'll get a soda. Bill, that's too much soda. The large at AMC, not a sponsor, Diet Coke, not a sponsor, but they could be.
Oh, that has to be like a liter and a half worth of
Dude,
soda.
I had to like pick it up from the little sticky cup holder with like 2 hands to make sure I wasn't going to spill it. I was really thrown off by it. I have nowhere to go with this conversation, but I really just wanted to get it out there that I'm thinking about it. It's on my mind, and that everybody should see Wicked because it was really good.
Yeah, I think we're gonna. I suddenly have plans this upcoming weekend, so I might have to wait to see Wicked. But yeah, you're not a little guy, so that is quite the endorsement of how gargantuan they are, how much they're making it worth your while. Which is especially funny because, like, the thought of a movie theater is they're trying to get you to sit there for an entire thing. So you would think they don't want to fill your bladder all the way up, but at the same time, maybe with how salty the popcorn is, that's supposed to like dehydrate you. I don't know. I'm sure they have put hours upon hours of research into this in order to figure out the best way to maximize the amount of money they're trying to take from you.
Yeah. It was interesting. It was great. One more thing I want to hit on, Bill, before we talk about Penn State's 44-7 win over Maryland. It was a very uneventful game outside of the first. What do you think, Bill? 85 seconds of game clock, but we'll talk about that in a second. Bill, you and I both have new microphones. So listeners, if you notice anything different, if you need the volume bumped up, if anything sounds different, tweet at me. I think I'm at RLRMattFlip on Twitter, or you can find me at MattFlip42 on Blue Sky for any feedback there as we enter the postseason with new microphones, with fresh legs, and with a renewed outlook, Bill, on Penn State's chances to win a Big Ten title all of a sudden. Where do you want to start? Do you want to start talking about how we got here? Do you want to keep this strictly Maryland? Where's your head at right now?
The thing with talking about the Maryland game is I think it's so straightforward that really Penn State went out there and just whooped down a team that is considerably worse than them. So how about we do this, man? How about we do a little bit of Maryland talk and then we do the ad and then we talk about like the big picture, the going to the play. We'll change up the outline a little bit just because I don't think there's too terribly much we could say about Maryland and say about the Maryland game other than it was so emphatic. It was such like a statement of intent. Like we got evidence that the football gods have a great sense of humor by having Penn State having Nick Singleton fumble to start the game and have that lead to a Maryland touchdown immediately. And then, of course, James Franklin has a great sense of humor by pissing off Mike Locksley at the very end. So, let's really quickly talk about the game, and then at the end we'll do the more like big picture, whatever.
So. Love it. All right, so Penn State really takes care of a business in a not very crowded Beaver Stadium. I get it; it was cold. Yeah. I think it was the first day of hunting season. Saturday after Thanksgiving.
Students weren't back yet.
I totally get it. Maryland comes out, opening play of the game. Nick Singleton fumbles the football. credit to Maryland. They understand that if you're going to score, you got to score by taking shots. First play of the game, they take their shot. They score like a 20-something yard touchdown, 25-yard to Caden Prather, former future Penn Stater, I want to say, at some point.
Yes.
Penn State target from MJ Morris, who threw it. And from there, Bill, it was all Penn State. They rattled off 44 straight points. They dropped 28 in the second quarter, topped it off by dropping 13 in the fourth quarter, including on the very last play of the game, where Bo Pribula found Tyseer Denmark in the end zone for Denmark's first career touchdown. I believe that makes Tyseer Denmark the fifth different wide receiver to catch a touchdown pass this year. Trey Wallace, Liam Clifford, Julian Fleming, Amari Evans, Tyseer. Yeah, 5. So good for Tyseer Denmark. A very cool story to have that happen. And Bill, they just kicked their ass. Like it was interesting to start because it's like, all right, I'm sure the team know. I don't care what Franklin said. Those guys knew that Ohio State lost. Those guys, there's no way. No, the stadium is so connected now. I get Wi-Fi sucks, but everybody had to have known. They went out there and they really took care of business. And Maryland misses a bowl game for the first time in a couple years under Mike Loxley. And I think James Franklin made sure to drive the nail in that coffin. Just your general thoughts, but we can start offense, defense, wherever you want to go.
Sure. So it's funny because Penn State opened as a 24-point favorite, ended as a 26.5-point favorite. And obviously that means in the eyes of basically everybody that Penn State's going to win. But the funny thing about them being a 24-point underdog is this game happened on the 11-year anniversary of the Penn State-Wisconsin game in 2013 when Penn State went into Camp Randall as 24-point underdogs. The final game Bill O'Brien coached and ended up knocking them off. And of course, it's coming on the heels of Michigan as a 20-plus point. I think they ended as 20 point.
Yeah, I think 21 is what I saw it close at.
Yeah. So they end up going into Columbus, taking care of business and setting things up really nicely for Penn State. And we're all feeling ourselves a little bit. We're all really excited. And then I don't know if there's a better microcosm for this Penn State team's regular season than there being some kind of adversity that was in large part self-inflicted that they had to figure out a way to navigate and get around. And like you mentioned, they did that really quickly. A thing that I couldn't help but think about after all of that is that the last time Maryland beat Penn State in 2020, the famous you were, we are game, Maryland actually, and this is probably where I think a bit of anxiety would have come from. Maryland actually, and I had blacked this out from my memory, unsurprisingly, jumped out to a 21-0 lead on Penn State. It was a touchdown. Penn State turnover on downs. Both teams traded punts, touchdown, 3-and-out, touchdown for Maryland. And when a game sets up like that, especially with guys as dangerous as Maryland potentially has in Ty Felton, in Caden Prather, in its running backs, who you actually look at the box score, their running backs put up decent numbers, and it was just a matter of, they couldn't consistently do anything in the passing game that really kept Penn State from being under any real trouble.
And on the running back point, Bill, just to rattle it off, Roman Hemby, 13 carries for 64 yards, 4.9 yards per carry. Nolan Ray, 9 carries for 51 yards, 5.7 yards per carry. Those are decent numbers, but when you look at the final rushing box score for Maryland as a team, 31 carries, 72 yards for 2.3 yards per carry.
Yeah.
And a big reason for that, well, not a big reason, the only reason for that is Penn State racked up in this game 9 sacks and lost, my quick math, 43 yards because of that. So
they racked up 6 sacks in this game.
6? Oh, apologies, I misread that. Yeah, 6 sacks. But they held the quarterbacks for Maryland to negative 43 yards rushing, which is going to bring it down by a good clip. So the defensive line really feasted in this game.
Yeah, so a lot of this game, the game starts out with Penn State having to overcome some kind of adversity. Kind of the story of this team throughout the course of this season is that there is going to be some form of adversity, whether that is Bowling Green taking it to them, whether that is being unable to really put away Illinois, whether that is what happened against USC or Minnesota, whether that is Drew Aller getting banged up against Wisconsin. And for much of this season, they have been able to look at that adversity and go, all right, we're fine. We're going to be okay. We're going to be able to get past this. And, it took a little bit of feeling out between Penn State and Maryland. Penn State field goal drive after the Maryland touchdown, and then a pair of 3 and outs. And then it just got to the point where I think I said that I either said this I might have said this in the preview pod, but I definitely said it, just in our Slack channel with Matt, Nick, and Craig. But it felt like once Penn State really landed a punch, this game was going to be over. And 13 plays, 60 yards. Nick Singleton runs in for 2 yards for a touchdown. That was the punch. And that punch just completely took Maryland out of it. It was 10-7 and might as well have been 1,000,000-7 at that point.
Especially like with what Penn State was able to do with their defensive front. Abdul Carter hit the Heisman pose, which was really, really cool. Deni Dennis Sutton got after it. Penn State did a really good job, I think, when they went 3 defensive end sets. There was a couple sets in there with Amin Vanover, Deni Dennis Sutton, and Abdul Carter. That was very productive. It really, and you said it best, Bill, like it could have been 1,000,000-0 the second Penn State took the lead in this game, 10-3.
Yep.
Shout out Ryan Barker, by the way, 49-yard field goal, new career high for him. I know he had one blocked at the end of the half, but it's cool to see Barker really starting to come into his own. I don't think that kid needs confidence because I think he's wired very differently based upon how he reacted after beating USC. But it is cool that we're seeing him continue to, in an otherwise uneventful game. I think that's a moment that we should celebrate. Shout out to Ryan Barker. I forgot where my train of thought even was at this point. But yeah, Bill, the Penn State defense took care of business on the offensive front, just for, rattling it off. Aller, not his most prolific day passing the ball, 17 for 26, 171 passing yards. That's 6.6 yards per attempt, which I believe is one of his lowest of the year, if not the lowest. And just 1 touchdown, that touchdown to Tyler Warren, first overall pick, who now becomes Penn State's all-time touchdown leader amongst tight ends, passing Pat Freiermuth. Bo Prabula, 2 for 3, 13 yards, 1 touchdown to Tyser Denmark, like we mentioned. And then Tyler Warren, 1 for 1 for 9 yards. He did not punt this week, which is good because he's a bad punter. Bill, offensively, pretty vanilla game plan. Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, 13 carries each. Singleton was able to do a lot more with his touches. He looks like, September Nick Singleton again. And then Bo Prabula ran pretty well, 6 carries for 29 yards. Tyler Warren did his thing, 3 for 32. One of those was a 29-yard almost pass where Aller really just got out of pressure and then just passed it to Warren like he was a basketball player. And Corey Smith on his birthday, 5 carries for 14 yards, 2.8 yards per attempt, and 1 very nice 12-yard run. Receiving-wise, like I said, it was Warren. Amari Evans, 4 for 49. A really cool play where Aller straight up just chucked it up. Like 2 guys running off the edge. Aller pretty much knew that if he threw it up there, Amari was going to be the one who saw the ball. It's a bet he made, and he won that bet because Amari was the only one who saw that ball going into the 2-minute warning.
It was the ultimate no. Okay, yes. Play like the reward potential on that, I would say, is medium. The risk potential is very high. It's funny because that's not too terribly dissimilar to the pick that Drew threw against Ole Miss.
It's not. No, you're right.
In the Peach Bowl, where he just kind of like chucks it up and hopes someone can make a play. And fortunately, Amari was able to make the play because Maryland's secondary was just all out of sorts by the time Drew lobbed that one up into the air.
No Trey Wallace in this game for an undisclosed reason. Franklin met with the press today because of the Big Ten title game, so his press availability is a little bit different. But it sounds like it's nothing too serious. We'll see if he's able to give it a go. And credit to Amari Evans. He really stepped up and caught a couple of nice balls in his absence. Aller made one specific throw to Tyler Warren towards the sideline to set up the field goal that got blocked. And it was a professional throw, I think, to say the least.
Yeah, it was very Josh Allen-y. Just the way he dropped his arm angle down, kind of threw it accurately right to the side. And he had another throw or two down the sidelines. One was the one that Khalil Dinkins brought in. One was the one that Luke Reynolds very nearly brought in, but he just didn't get his toe down. They were like, oh boy, yeah, that's not bad. That's not bad at all. The kind of throws that you don't want Drew to have to make, but it's nice seeing that he can make them. The passing game of this one, I don't put too terribly much bearing into the fact that Julian Fleming is working his way back from, whatever cost him a game or two or limited him for a game or two, mixed with the fact that there was no Trey Wallace in this game. This was a game that was always kind of going to be about the tight ends, even if Penn State wasn't very obviously trying to pad Tyler Warren's stats. And I say that affectionately. I hope Penn State tries to pad Tyler Warren's stats. I hope they try and feed him the football because he's their best player. But I did enjoy the fact that both Amari Evans and Khalil Dinkins were able to just kind of get into a little bit of a rhythm ahead of next week. Very, very quickly, once Penn State started taking care of business, I stopped caring about all right, you got to do this. You got to do this. Everything came down to stay healthy ahead of next week and have a guy like an Amari Evans, like a Khalil Dinkins, start to build up that confidence a little bit heading into next week when they're going to play one hell of a test in Oregon. And there is no guy who I think that applies more to than Nick Singleton and how he ran the football. Penn State really did a good job getting its perimeter running game going, whether that was on outside zone runs, whether that was on, those little pitches out wide, and basically trying to get Singleton to the edge and let him use his speed and his explosiveness to, instead of running between the tackles for 2 or 3 yards, get outside, run for 8, 9 yards. Singleton in the first quarter of this game carried the ball 3 times for 3 yards. Remainder of the game, he carried the ball 10 times for 84 yards and 2 touchdowns, which is the Nick Singleton that Penn State, you don't, this is an obvious thing, but if Singleton runs like that, if Singleton can run like that, they have a real shot at beating Oregon. He has not run at 6.7 yards per carry. That is his highest yards per carry total since the Kent State game when he ran for 7.4 yards per carry. He also caught 3 balls for 17 yards. It was a little bit of a safety valve for Drew there. So to me, that was the big thing I wanted. I'm glad happened in this game. Getting guys like Evans and Dinkins going, and then getting just Singleton, getting him into a little bit of a rhythm. Now, doing that against Oregon and the speed and the aggressiveness that they have in their defense is a considerably different task from doing that against Maryland. But what this game needed to be for Penn State's offense was something that just let them puff their chests out a little bit, something that let them build up a little confidence, whether it's as a unit or as individual guys. And I think that in the guy that is probably the most important to have that confidence going into this upcoming weekend, and in some guys who I think are going to be really important to supplement what Penn State already does well, I think it was really good to see Singleton, Evans, Dinkins, and then obviously Warren and Howard in the offensive line and everything that all those guys, we kind of expect out of those guys, go out there and have just a really professional performance against a Maryland team that they could impose themselves on. I think that's the big thing. You want Penn State to be able to impose itself against a team it can impose itself on. Was a little hairy there at the beginning, but they were eventually able to do it.
You rattled off all those guys, Bill, who it's important that they go out there and they have just a workman-like game. One guy you didn't mention, and I think because he's not a skill player, was Nolan Rucci. It was important for Nolan Rucci to go out there and play a complete game, play a lot of reps, continue to get more comfortable. Not that Rucci hasn't played a ton of football this year already, but it's going to be different now. He's the starting right tackle for the number 3 team in the nation, in all likelihood, playing for a Big Ten title. The standard he has to play to is very, very high. So to watch Rucci go out there, play a full game, he really showed his escapability. I don't believe he was sacked in this game because of that escapability, but the Oregon defensive line is a much different beast than the Maryland defensive line, and it was just nice to see Rucci go out there, play decent. Didn't notice him a lot of the time. He did a good job on all those tush pushes when JB Nelson comes in, takes his spot at right tackle, and Rucci and Cooper Cousins kind of are the guys who push. Overall, I'm pretty satisfied with how the offensive line played. A couple plays here and there you can nitpick. Katron didn't have a ton of really nice rushing lanes, but that Maryland defensive front is pretty good at stopping the run. Again, they're not like Oregon, but overall, I can't find too much to complain about in this kind of game. Bill?
There's one thing that I will mention, and it's just one of those things that has to get cleaned up between now and then. 8 tackles for loss for Maryland on the game. It was a bit of a feast or famine performance from Penn State in the running
A lot
game.
of fumbles too. A lot of
there were-
fumbled snaps. I think at least 2 of those are fumbled snaps. The Bo one
Well-
and the Catron one.
which like, you know, Katron Allen fumbles a snap, whatever. Like they shouldn't do that in a game that matters at all. But 8 tackles for loss. You know, Katron Allen, especially whenever they were running the ball with him, I thought it looked like you know, he seemed more prone to getting stuffed in the backfield. That is just a pure vibes thing. I'd have to actually go back and look at that. But if you are using this game to go, all right, Penn State did this, Oregon's on deck. Oregon has maybe the best defensive line in college football. Them and Ohio State are like right there with one another. They are a team that just generally believes in trying to pressure you on both sides of the football and make you uncomfortable on both sides of the football. 8 tackles for loss against Maryland is not going to be something that gets it done. So that's something that's going to they're going to have to make that a major point of emphasis between now and Saturday evening in Indianapolis.
Agreed. And Bill, we'll wrap this up, but 2 more things I want to call out before we get to game balls. Adavian Collins and Dejon Lane, first career interceptions for each of those guys, and walk-on redshirt freshman, defensive end Jordan Mayer, second consecutive game with a sack. Always cool when the benches can get emptied and watch these young guys make a couple of nice plays. Really well done, especially by Dejon Lane on that pick. Really, really nice movement skills on that return. I thought that was a very nice play. Good ball skills from Davian Collins as well. Read it really well. Make a play on the football. Cool to see. Game balls, Bill. Give me 1 on offense, 1 on defense, 1 miscellaneous.
Offense, I will go with Nick Singleton. I think that Nick Singleton really needed, like I mentioned, I thought he really needed to have this game in particular. And I think the fact that he had it is something that Penn State could really build on as it gets into what's going to be its biggest game of the season. I mean, Big Ten championships on the line. If you can have the best version of Nick Singleton for that, you're going to have a real shot. And then for defensive game ball, I'm going to give it to Devon J. Thomas. He gave he had 4 tackles on the day, 1 for one solo tackle, and we'll split it with Dennis Sutton, who had 3 tackles, all solo, a sack and a tackle for loss. After the game, Dennis Sutton tweets what happened to the whole "you were, we are" thing, and I want to give credit to Avery Hill of the Daily Collegian for this tweet. Devon J. Thomas after the game, quote, "I don't really respect Maryland. My big brother died at Maryland," quote. And then Avery mentioned Jay Thomas was referring to Jordan McNair, who died in 2018 after a heat stroke under former coach DJ Durkin. And Devon, Jordan McNair, and Dennis and Sutton all played at McDonough. And I'm just really happy because this game clearly meant a lot to those 2 in particular, and they were carrying it with carrying something really, really heavy into this football game. And I'm glad that they were able to. I'm glad that they were able to pick up a win and, get some kind of just like joy out of being able to say they were able to take it to Maryland.
For me, offensively, I'm going to give it to Amari Evans. He's really starting to find his groove a little bit. The nice touchdown last week. He had a nice catch along the sideline. Good ball skills on just that lob. He's coming on at the right time. So I'm going to give it to Amari offensively. Defensively, Abdul Carter. I mean, the Heisman pose says it all. His up and under move is absolutely lethal.
Yeah.
Like, he had Andre Roy in just the tickle chamber the entire time. There was absolutely nothing he could do to stop number 11. So big shout out to Abdul Carter. And then my miscellaneous guy, I'm going to give it to Zion Tracy. Nothing special he did, but a good job returning punts. He had a couple, nice little wiggle on a couple of them, and getting the sack I thought was a cool moment. He's been playing a lot of football. It's a different role that he has to play than what I'm sure he trained for in the offseason. And every time I'm out there, or every time he's out there, I just happen to notice number 7. So miscellaneous for me goes to Zion Tracy.
Sure.
Do you have a miscellaneous one? Did you give one? I forget. You don't have to if you don't want to.
I will give it to Riley Thompson because I thought he punted the ball well.
Do you see what he does, Bill, when they do the win cam on Instagram?
Yeah, does he do boom? He does the AJ and Big Justice, right?
He brings the boom every time. And I think he's like the oldest guy on the team because he's an Aussie. He's probably like 24 or 25. And him being the one to do it sends me.
I think there was another group of guys that did the AJ.
It was
and Big
Clifford.
Justice.
It was Clifford.
Okay, yeah. If you are one of our listeners who is above the age of like 35 years old, do not worry about any of this.
Ronnie Thompson bringing the boom. All right, Bill.
That's what he does.
Let's pay a couple of bills. Bill, I heard you have weekend plans. Do you know what you're doing this weekend, or more specifically, where you're going to be?
I'm going to be in lovely Indianapolis, Indiana, the home of our podcast sponsor, pulling it up right here on the YouTube stream, Home Field Apparel.
That's right, folks. Home Field Apparel has been our podcast sponsor for 3 years. And if you don't know, they make some of the coolest collegiate apparel in the marketplace today. Bill, is that the bomber jacket or the coach's jacket you have on right now? I'm guessing that's the bomber jacket.
This is the bomber jacket. That is correct.
And I own the coach's jacket. It is stylish. They really take the time to dig through the archives, find unique logos, and connect with your school. Not only do they oh my God, Bill. Not only do they have great jackets, hats, they have t-shirts, crew necks, hoodies, joggers, pretty much you name it, they have it. And they have every school under the sun, and they are always adding more. Our listeners can get 15% off their first order with promo code RLR24. If you're traveling to Indianapolis, Indiana, and if you own home field stuff, I highly recommend you rock it, because I'm sure you'll get complimented by many people, maybe even Bill and myself, if we see you out there on the streets of, oh my God, Bill, what's Indy called? What's the nickname? Naptown, thank you. In Naptown. So as always, 15% off your first order. Holidays are coming up. The code is RLR24. Thank you to Home Field for sponsoring this podcast. Bill.
And can I say one more thing for our listeners? If you are going to Indianapolis and you would like to get your hands on some Home Field apparel, I don't know if anything with like a code or a discount would work. I'm just saying you might want to keep an eye out.
I don't even know what this is. Do I know what this is?
I know you don't. No, you do not.
Oh, man, secrets. We have one communication channel for our entire operation. How did this get past me?
Wow. Because I didn't drop it in there. I was texting with someone who knows.
Oh, interesting. All right, keep your eye out. Bill, when should listeners keep their eyes or ears out? Where's the announcement going to be? What is this? Can I just shut up now, or what's my verdict here?
All I know is there might be some stuff on Saturday.
Okay. All right. Keep your eyes out for Saturday. Bill, where do you want to go? What do you want to talk about? Do you want to talk about Parker Washington going over 100 yards for the Jacksonville Jaguars? You want to talk about
honestly,
Purdue?
If there's one,
Neil Brown Christ. Out at West Virginia. That's two.
If there's one thing I want to talk about from the Jags game, it is that when Azeez Al-Shaair had that really dirty hit on Trevor Lawrence, it is that Brenton Strange was the guy who like got right over to him and really kicked things off. And I was just really proud of Brenton Strange in that moment. But if we're talking about where I want to go, I think the answer is Indianapolis, Indiana.
Bill, Penn State, Big Ten East unofficial champions, 11-1,
Big Ten East
11-1 season. I cannot believe Michigan beat Ohio State. It is absolutely hilarious. The tweets have been phenomenal. It's been a very fun day on the internet. Bill, they're going back to Indy for the first time in 8 years. They're 3.5-point dogs. We'll have a full Oregon preview a little bit later in the week. How you feeling?
I'm feeling great. Like full disclosure to start is that I very preliminary started doing research into Oregon. I've watched them plenty this year, but actually looking into this matchup, and like, candidly, I don't think this is a very good matchup for Penn State, but I also don't care. Penn State you play sports to play for championship. You do this to compete for championships. And right now, there are two championships that Penn State can win. A Big Ten championship and a national championship. And due to a really wild sequence of events, the Nittany Lions are going to be able to compete for one of those. They are going to be able to go to Indianapolis for the first time since 2016, for the second time under James Franklin. They're going in 1-0 in Big Ten championship games, and they're going to do it against a really big, bad, nasty, physical, and talented Oregon team that they're going to have their A+ game for. The way Penn State got there was stuff that was in Penn State's control, which was win as many regular season games as possible and put yourself in position just in case. And then just in case happened. It's actually really funny because I thought back to 2016 when Penn State made it to the Big Ten championship game. And obviously, the game that we all remember as the one that got Penn State to the Big Ten championship game was that double overtime classic between Ohio State, Michigan, and Columbus. JT Barrett, is he short? Is he not? They give him a fourth down. Ohio State runs it in for a touchdown. Penn State then has to beat Michigan State to go to the Big Ten championship, and they beat Michigan State 45-12. What people forget or can forget is that game didn't send Penn State to the Big Ten championship. The only reason that game was as important as it was because 2 weeks earlier, Michigan went to Kinnick and lost to Iowa 14-13, which opened the door wide open for Penn State if it just took care of business and got a little help to get to. And I think it is a big endorsement of James Franklin, of the way he runs his program, of the fact that they have found ways to win, and that despite the best efforts of Matt, who says, well, they got to lose a dumb one at some point, they have not lost a dumb one, that they just took care of business, they won their games, they didn't focus on anything else, and they made sure they put themselves in a position where if something happened somewhere else in the world of college football, they were there to pounce on it. They were there to take advantage of it. And they were there to get on the path to Indianapolis after it looked like they wouldn't be on it.
They did a very good job navigating what has been a chaotic season all the way around. I'm of the opinion that like Penn State was due to lose a dumb one, and they let's be honest, they tried a couple of times with USC and Minnesota, but to James Franklin's credit, he coached them out of it. They figured out a way to clutch victory from the jaws of defeat, and that's a testament to coaching. This is an absolute narrative shifter week for Penn State once again under James Franklin. If they can beat an undefeated, unanimous number one in the AP poll, Oregon, the big game James crowd really can't talk anymore. I don't know how you could. That's a 12-1 season and maybe the number one seed in the college football playoff. And they would have made it even the 4-team era in this example too, which is awesome. I'm so excited that Penn State gets this opportunity. Jalen Reed, Nick Dawkins, Devon J. Thomas, Smith Vilbert, these 4th, 5th, 6th year guys have been through hell. Like some of these guys are part of this team during the COVID season. They had to deal with the bullshit of 2021. Like these are dudes who came to Penn State, committed to Penn State in that late 2010s era where Penn State was clearly on the ascent. They got to watch them plateau a little bit, and now they get the chance to take them to a place the program has not been. And not just the Big Ten title, but the Big Ten title and 12 wins in quite a long time. And that's the exciting part about this game for me. So I know, Bill, and I'm just going to get this out of the way because I know where you stand on this. If you're one of the people who is like, oh my God, I'd rather, have the first round game in the back pocket and have the extra week, shut up. If you get a chance to play for a Big Ten title, you want to play for the Big Ten title. Second of all, even if Penn State loses, the committee is not going to eliminate Penn State from hosting a home playoff game. Worst case scenario, Bill, we are tailgating in Beaver Stadium parking lots and in that cow pasture the Saturday before Christmas. Best case scenario, Penn State wins the Big Ten. That's about as win-win as it gets. Obviously, I want to win the Big Ten, but I'm over the moon about the way this season has gone.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that I believe is that, I think if you're able to get that extra week to get healthy and to practice and to iron out some wrinkles, and you have, 3 weeks in between games, like, I think that is a good thing. I think Penn State's a really interesting test case in whether or not, because what is the narrative around conference championship games right now?
They don't matter.
It is
or you don't want to be in them.
It is not that they don't matter. It is that if you lose them, the committee won't ding you too terribly much because
if you're in a
it's a bonus.
If you're in a
game,
Big Two conference, I think that's true, though.
You would think. But I do feel like there's a little bit of like wish casting, or until I see otherwise, I will think that's just wish casting. I will think that is just totally guessing on how this would impact things. So like there's that little part of me that's also like, God, like I could see this backfiring on, if this backfires on Penn State, not ideal, blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, it's a chance to win the Big Ten. It is a chance to do something that you have done one other time in the Big Ten championship game era. It is a chance to do something for the second time under James Franklin. It is a chance to, depending on how things play out in the SEC, if Penn State wins this game, they will go into the playoff as the number one team in the country, or they could go into this playoff as the number one team in the country. It'd probably be depend on Georgia beating Texas,
which has already happened this year.
Which has already happened this year. Yeah, but like number one seed Penn State is entirely on the table in the event they could win this game. So like all year, my focus and all of this stuff in talking about Penn State, where it's going to be seated, what its path is going to be, are they going to have a home playoff game? Are they going to be this has always been just go out there and win and do not worry about anything else, because all that other stuff is just noise that ultimately you cannot control. And the one thing that you can control is the outcome of the football games you're playing in. And 11 of the 12 times Penn State stepped onto a football field this year, they were able to do that. The only other Power 4 teams that were able to do that were Oregon, which ended up running the table, Texas, which has that one loss to Georgia, not a Power 4 team, but Notre Dame. And, Notre Dame and Penn State are kind of weirdly linked at the hip right now, but neither here nor there.
I've always
and
said,
Indiana,
if you're not going to have a perfect season, and I've said this for years, if you're not going to have a perfect season, you want that loss to be at home to a MAC team that you paid $2 million to be there. I've always said that.
Yeah. And then Indiana, which
is the best story in football.
Excuse me. They got really fortunate with their schedule. They did what they were supposed to do, and then they went to Columbus and played one team and got shoved around. So like, this is just not amid like the chaos or a very chaotic year in college football. Penn State is one of the teams that has managed to generally avoid the chaos, or when they face chaos, come out on the other side of it. And for all that other nonsense, that has put Penn State into a position where it controls its own destiny, where it can go into the playoff as the Big Ten champions, as the number one team in the country. And right now, Matt, I'm not sure this Penn State team can win a national championship. Like I'll just come out and say it. It would be very dependent on the draw that they get, dependent on, are they hosting a playoff game? Or are they getting the first round bye? Who are they getting as after that first round bye? All these sorts of things. But if they can go out and beat Oregon, I am going to think that Penn State can win I'm not just going to think that Penn State can win a national championship. I will fully believe that Penn State is capable of winning a national championship.
They'll have a nice path there. No matter what, if they get that 5 seed, they'll have a nice path there. Bill, your dog just jumped up on your couch. It was pretty cool. I saw it in the background.
Sensor, my girlfriend, I think, just got home. I will check later with that because.
So one last thing I want to talk about: the AP poll doesn't matter. The AP poll does not matter, but the Notre Dame Penn State thing just got me curious because they were very close in terms of total points. There was like 8 points separating the two teams in the AP poll. Bill, Penn State is ranked at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different spots by different writers in the AP poll. What do you think the highest is?
Probably 2
by Andy Yamashita of the Seattle Times. Andy, you are welcome on the pod anytime. Bill, what do you think the lowest some writers have them ranked as?
I guess 9.
8. Okay. Bob Bayou, I don't know how to say his last name, from Austin, Texas. His top 7: Oregon, Texas, Boise State, Notre Dame, who lost to a MAC team, Georgia, SMU, Ohio State, Penn State at 8, which is kind of crazy. And also with them there is, excuse me, I don't mean to be calling out people on the podcast, but I was pretty upset at this. And David Jablonski of Dayton, Ohio. It's an Ohio guy, so 2 losses, never forget. Oregon, Texas, Georgia, Notre Dame, Tennessee, SMU, Ohio State, with Penn State at 8. I don't know. AP poll doesn't matter anymore, But if that's the number 8 team in the country and you're allowed to think that, I'm curious what the narrative becomes if Penn State is able to beat
Yeah.
Oregon, because that feels kind of absurd that somebody would have them as low as 8.
This kind of gets back to what I've been saying with just win your games and let that take care of everything for you. If Penn State is a 12-1 Big Ten championship, Big Ten champion with a win over Oregon, everything else is going to take care of itself. Everything else is going to take care of itself. So like, I don't put too terribly much stock into that. I don't put too terribly much stock into let me rephrase that. Before they made the Big Ten championship game, I was like, whatever. Like, what's the worst that happens? They host a 6-11 game and we have a playoff game in Beaver Stadium. Oh no, how terrible. I think that now that they are in the Big Ten championship game, it's very easy for me to just not pay attention to any of that stuff, and especially kind of wipe it away, because like, instead of worrying about the perception that people have about Penn State and what they think of Penn State in this moment, Penn State has another chance and another opportunity and the ultimate opportunity to answer any question that they have about them. Emphatically answer any question they have about them if they can go out and they can beat Oregon. So right now, a newspaper writer in Dayton, or a newspaper writer in Austin, or a newspaper writer in Provo or Jonesboro, or wherever a newspaper writer with an AP vote might put them, who is a little bit lower than them on everyone, doesn't matter. You go out, you take care of business against Oregon in the biggest game that you're going to play this season. As of right now, biggest game you're going to play this season as of right now, absolutely nothing else matters.
Agreed, 100%. Bill, that's all I got. Anything else you want to touch on? You're going to the game? Am I correct in that assumption? You will be in Indianapolis?
I will. Yeah, I'm waking up on Saturday morning and driving out from Columbus.
I think I'm going to go. I'm
excited. You did you go in 2016?
I didn't. It was my sophomore year of college. I didn't want to take the bus. I watched it though. I'll never forget. I was living in Beaver Hill on the 7th floor.
I also watched it.
Where at? Were you at the game?
I was at the game. Yes.
I watched it from my sister's friend's apartment 2 floors down in Beaver Hill. And I remember when they won, I went on the balcony and screamed, and I got to watch the flow of people flood Beaver Canyon. And that was one of my favorite nights of my college experience. I didn't get to go, but I got to see a really cool moment. I think I should go to this. It's like a 3-hour drive from Chicago.
You should go. You should go to this. And if you are a Penn State fan listening to this, I highly recommend you go to this. If you're on the fence, I highly recommend you go to this, because you think about it, there is really no other place where we as Penn State fans could all gather with one another outside of Beaver Stadium and be of a mindset that we can witness something special. I've been to the Fiesta Bowl. I've been to the Rose Bowl. I've been to those bowl games for Penn State. Nothing had the sense of unity and camaraderie and bigness. The Rose Bowl is a bit of a different animal, but in terms of just a lot of people going to this one place, it is a truly 50-50 split in the crowd. Maybe it's hard to get out here from Eugene and it's a little less than 50-50, but whatever. And you're just around Penn State fans, and you're around fans who are spending all day in a good mood, who are in a really celebratory mood. We're going to be remarkably appreciative of the fact that they are there, and it's a blast. Indianapolis is a great city for big games and big events. I've been out there. Cool. I've been out there, of course, for previous Big Ten championship games. I've gone to Pacers games and went for the NBA All-Star game last year. I've had a few work things in Indianapolis. It's a really great place. So I highly recommend, if you are on the fence, going to the game for no reason other than, if you do not, and you are able to go to the game, if Penn State wins, and we don't have to sit here and wonder what happens if Penn State loses right now. For this moment, it is, if Penn State wins, you are going to spend the rest of your life regretting the fact that you were not there to watch Penn State win the Big Ten and put itself in the driver's seat to win put itself in one of the driver's seats to win a national championship.
That's a good point. You may have convinced me. It's a quick drive. I gain an hour.
Yeah,
I gain an hour because Eastern time. All right.
Yeah.
I might rally the troops.
Last thing. Do you want to spend 5 minutes talking about the game that is sending Penn State to a national championship? Just because I think our listeners would enjoy that one,
dude. Their two best players are out. You're at home. You have all the money in the world. Like, you're at the $20 million roster, and that's what you do, dude. I can't believe it. I legitimately can't believe it. I mean, I'm in a pick 'em pool with some buddies, and like I had Michigan to cover. Like, I never really bought into the narrative of like they're really going to blow them out, because I thought the Michigan defensive line and a maligned Ohio State offensive line is at least going to lead to like a half of competitive football. Dude, why would Ohio State just keep on trying to run up the gut the whole time? What was he thinking? Does he want to be the Bears OC that badly? Like, come on, dude.
It was remarkable because, like, I thought Ryan Day, I didn't necessarily think it was a bad idea to call and like build your game plan around the fact that you're just not going to have a consistent downfield passing game due to the reshuffling that you've done on your offensive line and how good Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant in particular are in the middle of their defense. So like I understood that. It was then the fact that they just seemed to consistently believe that they could run up the gut on Michigan on those exact guys who were lined up against that exact weakness. That was like stunning to me. And Matt, did you see the time of possession in the fourth quarter of that game?
Oh, Michigan probably had it for, oh geez, I don't even know. Because they went for it on fourth down a couple of times. They had that big run from Mullins. Yeah. I'm going to say it was at least 2-1.
You're wrong. Michigan had the ball for 13 minutes and 3 seconds. Ohio State had it for 1 minute and 50 seconds.
Oh, so it was worse than 2-1. Or better.
Yeah, it was a lot worse than 2-1. And it was just like, it really does. You know, as one of the people who kind of has a sense of how things are going in Columbus, I thought that wanting to fire Day the last couple of years, or move on from Ryan Day the last couple of years, was, I don't want to say unfair, but like Michigan knew everything that he was trying to do. He knows how to get his guys up for games against basically everybody but Michigan for whatever reason. Michigan had a roster of 22, 23-year-old men for 3 straight years. So like I was a little more forgiving, but this was the year with Ohio State where I was like, okay, you have the best roster in the country. You have the most talented roster in the country. This is the year to show you can win a national championship. And maybe they can still win a national championship, but man, this entire team, just, you could feel it from where you were sitting at home watching the game, the tension and the anxiety when they weren't able to put that away or pull that away and just do things at will. It was remarkable.
Do you get the vibe that he's done there if they lose in the playoff?
I think it probably depends. I would assume it's when they lose. If they lose in one of the, because they're going to play at least a home game, at most a home game. Like they're there's a world where they get sent on the road for the first playoff, and not a particularly likely.
I think they will.
But there is a world where they get sent on the road for their first home game, for their first playoff game, where it would probably be on the road to like Georgia, which, God, please, I would love to watch that football game. If he can get to a national semifinal and then whatever happens, that's one thing. But the anger and the frustration, and, all credit to Michigan. I think Michigan deserves a ton of credit for how they approached that game. Like the fact that they, Will Howard was 19 for 33 for 175 yards with a touchdown, 2 interceptions. And that seemed like it hurt and provided some sort of like psychological barrier to Ohio State in a way that Davis Warren going 9 for 16 for 62 yards, no touchdowns and 2 picks just didn't for Michigan, which is remarkable. And I think they deserve a lot of credit because they went into the biggest game they're going to play this year as a 6-5 football team, believing that they had to have something special for this game. And it was just body blow, body blow, body blow. No Colson Loveland, no Will Johnson. That's okay. Body blow, body blow. All right, we're just going to keep your offense on the sideline for the entirety of the fourth quarter, and we're just going to win this football.
I mean, it's a culture win. Like what Michigan did just shows that team still has what it wanted, what it has built its identity on, even though the players aren't as good, and they can still find their fastball every once in a while. And they found it in the biggest game of the year. So all the credit in the world to that Michigan program. Really, really excited to watch them in the Outback Bowl. Like really, that's going to sound like me being a jerk. I genuinely mean that. To be as bad as I think you were this year and to guarantee a winning season is impressive. So good for Michigan. And Ohio State finishes the season in fourth place with a $20 million roster in the Big Ten.
The one thing I will say is that tomorrow is the day when I listen to like sports talk radio in Columbus to kind of get a sense for what people are talking about. And there's one guy who tweeted, full transparency, I've just spoken to corporate. I'm not coming in on Monday unless I'm able to do the show I want. No exceptions. If you don't hear me, that's why. Which is really funny because normally that's what you tweet when like your department heads fire a coworker for something that they didn't do. Instead, he's tweeting that about the loss in a football game. So then I asked my brother-in-law, who listens to a lot more sports radio around here than I do. And he basically said that the guy who tweeted that is the douche from Crazy Iron, the douche in Parks and Rec. So like it's already an insane person doing it, and now it's going to get even better. But yeah, just a really wild day. And really wild day was a really wild game to watch because Ohio State scores a touchdown, Jeremiah Smith right on the verge of halftime to make it 10-10. And I'm like, all right, cool. Like we're done here. Ohio State's going to come out and just be all right. And then they punt after 10 plays on their first drive, throw an interception on their second drive. They get an interception that puts them at Michigan 16, and they miss a field goal, 3 and out. Their last first down, Matt, came, let me just make sure I got this right. Their last first down came with about 5 minutes left in the third quarter, and they did not get another first down after that. It was a remarkable football game to watch. It was a terrible football game, but one where like the tension and the stakes and what it meant and what it like means for both programs going forward made it like a spectacle. And of course, to put the local angle on it, Penn State was a big beneficiary of that. So now we're heading to Indianapolis.
Oh, I can't wait. 8:00 on CBS. No Gus. We get Gary again.
It's on CBS?
Yeah, I think so. Don't quote me on that. Fox, you're not a sponsor, but I apologize if I got that wrong. I'm pretty confident it's on CBS, Bill. We'll look in real time. Listening as we figure this out in real time. The ESPN app, Bill, is telling me it's on CBS. Is that right? Am I crazy? Yeah. Don't copyright us because we don't have a legal department. All right, we're calling it here, Bill. That's all I got. You got anything else?
No, I got nothing. I'm just I'm really excited for this next week. I'm really excited to dive into Oregon, try and find ways that Penn State can pull off what would be an upset here. Not a huge upset, but an upset nonetheless. And of course, I'm really excited to see a lot of folks wearing blue and white in Indianapolis.
And not just because the Indianapolis Colts are there. Thank you so much for listening to this edition of Roar Lions Roar. If you liked what you heard, be sure to leave us a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, leave a like, jump in the comments, talk about the Penn State game with other Penn State fans. Be sure to follow us on Blue Sky at roarlionsroar.com. We are also on Twitter over at RLRblog. You can find me on Twitter at RLR Matt Flip, excuse me. Bill, you are at Bill DeFilippo on both Blue Sky and Twitter, I believe.
That's right.
Home Field
That's right.
Apparel, thank you to our Indianapolis-based friends for sponsoring this podcast. Again, it's 15% off your first order with promo code RLR24. And for my co-host, Bill DeFilippo, I'm Matt Flipovitz. Take care, everyone, and go State.